Hey Samuel,
Hey, Sydney.
I'm going on a trip to the UK and I'm looking for some recommendations of things to do in England. Do you know of anything?
Uh, I personally am a really big fan of the pump room, but make sure you go to the tea house and not the gay bar.
I'm glad you're here on this Sunday. I'm going to get right into the message. I'm going to tell it like it is, as they say. Oh, I heard a hallelujah. Do you think I don't know what the hell is going on? And a lot of strange places. Where in the hell have you been? Hell fire. Hell fire. Hell fire. All right. Okay. There's something else, too.
Hello and welcome to the Satire Fire. I'm Sydney
And I'm Samuel.
and we're back again with another. No. I was going for my
You're once weekly.
I was going for my once weekly promise 3 seconds or less British accent, and I failed miserably. So you're welcome, everyone. We're here for another week of talking about Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. We are on part 2 of our 3-part series on this book. So if this is the first episode you're listening to and you've never read this, I recommend going back and listening to part 1 because that's a plot summary where we talk about what's going on in this gossip drama heavy book. What's all the gossip? What's the hot gossip on Northanger Abbey? Well, I tell you in the last episode. So I would definitely recommend going and listening to that one if you haven't read it, or if you need a refresher, or if you just like the sound of my voice, go listen to that one. But today we're going to be talking about several things. We're going to talk about who is Jane Austen. Obviously, you've probably heard of her, but who is she? Where did she come from? Why did she write books like this? And also a bit of historical context that'll help us understand this book better to prepare us for our part 3, which will be an analysis where we're kind of just discussing the themes, the tropes, what's going on. Is it relevant today? Do we like it? Do we not? And so those two things we'll be talking about today will be gothic literature and the Regency era. And, what do we need to know about those things to help us understand this book better? So might be a lot of information. Hopefully it'll be fun. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Hopefully Samuel enjoys it. I don't know. We'll see.
If I don't, I'll just walk out. I'll just leave, and it'll
Yeah.
just be you guys and Sydney hanging out for the rest of the podcast.
So, if you stop hearing Samuel's voice, you also feel free to stop listening to the podcast because it's just going to go downhill from there.
Yeah, if at any point my voice turns into what sounds like something I recorded afterwards of me just going, oh, wow, yeah, then from that point forward, I did not pay attention.
And if you're unfamiliar with this podcast, I just wanted to welcome you. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode or any other episodes you choose to listen to. We are a podcast all about satire. We talk about satirical novels, and in between each book series, we do a little interlude episode where we discuss another form of satirical media. So thanks for being here. Jane Austen fans, thanks for being here. If that's what got you here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you got here because you're here. But before we get into that, Samuel, what's up? What's going on? You reading anything? Watching anything?
Yeah, so I think that this is a first for our intro conversation where I'm not going to talk about a book or a song or a thing I've done. I'm going to talk about an author that I really like. So his name is Stephen Graham Jones, and he is an indigenous horror fiction writer, and I think this dude rocks. I've read several of his books at this point. I've read the book Mongrels, and then I also think that one that people are probably familiar with is The Only Good Indians. Then he's got several other books that popped off, I guess, a little bit. One of them was the series that he did recently that started with the book My Heart is a Chainsaw. His most recent book, The Buffalo Hunter, actually ended up on Barack Obama's list of best books that he read this year.
Wow.
And I think, I would really love for Stephen Graham Jones to be the next Stephen King. I don't know how, like, reasonable that is for that to be the case, but I think his books are really, really good. I think he's starting to gain a lot of traction around his books. And also, like Stephen King, he's, like, really prolific. Like, he puts out a book a year, probably, on average. And all of them that I've read so far have been bangers. I think that he does a really good job of writing horror that both pays homage to the history and the roots of horror, while still carving out a niche by being an indigenous writer who is taking on a very specific perspective when it comes to horror writing, and also being able to write about experiences that a lot of people that are currently in the sphere don't necessarily have the capacity to write about. And so currently I'm in the middle of one of his books. I Was a Teenage Slasher, which is kind of like a self-referential, introspective look at the slasher genre, where it's a book being told from the perspective of someone in prison who, when they were young, was basically the bad guy in a slasher movie. And I'm having a really good time with it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think, like I said, he's become more popular lately. But I think more people should be checking him out and checking in on his backlog. Because as far as, like, people who are actively contributing to horror fiction, he's almost certainly my favorite active author.
First of all, what's going on with the Stevens? Like, if I had a nickel for every time a man named Steven became a horror fiction author, I'd have 2 nickels, but isn't it weird that it happened twice? But yeah, I feel like I've heard of The Only Good Indian. Is that the one? I haven't read that, but I haven't read any of his books, but I think I'd be interested to try one. So
I got into him because my boyfriend is indigenous and is also a big fan of horror, and so finding out about an indigenous man who is a horror author who writes about indigenous characters in his book, it's
exciting.
Of course, he likes this guy, and so I got into him from
this
that.
is made for me.
Yeah.
He was like, did you write this for me?
Yeah, so if you're out there listening, Stephen Graham Jones, I love you, but in particular, my boyfriend is a huge fan, so keep up the good work.
Speaking of Stephen King, this isn't what I was going to talk about, but I've recently been seeing a surge of people on TikTok, on Book Talk, reading 11/22/63, which this has been my bag for years and years and years. So I've read several Stephen King books. I appreciate the man who doesn't. Well, no, some people don't, but I've read a lot of Stephen King, but actually that's my favorite one. And Samuel, you're the one who recommended that book to me. I don't know if you remember that, but I borrowed your book, and
I mean, then that was what, 8 years ago?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But that is my favorite Stephen King book to date that I've read. He's written some good ones, but that one, it's kind of unique in like what he does. But
it's different than a lot of his other books, for sure. Yeah.
But anyways, I'm just like, this is really interesting. What causes Book Talk trends, and specifically, why are people suddenly reading 11/22/63? It's also funny because I feel like people are starting it because they're seeing it on TikTok, and then they're like, oh, it's over 1,000 pages. And,
Yeah, it's a real door stopper of a book.
Yeah, but I'm glad people are finding the book, but it's just really interesting to me.
I guess assassinations are in the air. Tis the
Assassinating.
season.
We're gonna get
But what have you been reading or doing or planning or up to lately?
So what I am doing, if you heard our little teaser at the beginning of this episode, it wasn't just a joke. I'm going to the UK, baby. I've never been to Europe before in my life, in any country, and one of my closest friends moved to Brighton, England, a couple months ago for grad school, and she invited me to come and hang out in England, but also we're going to go to Scotland. And so I'm leaving this week, but by the time you're hearing this, it doesn't matter. I don't want you guys to know where I am going to be, but I'm going to England. So I'm really excited. We're going to see London. We're going to spend a couple days in London. I'll obviously see Brighton where she lives. We're going to do like a day trip to Oxford and see the new college, I think it is, which is the one that people probably think of when they think of Oxford University. Mm-hmm. Oxford has like so many colleges, and we learned that from my mistake that I made. Mm-hmm. Real lore heads, that's the word. You get it, because back in the Brave New World series, I made fun of Aldous Huxley for going to Balliol College and not Oxford University, but turns out that's one of the colleges of Oxford. But yeah, so it has several colleges, but we're gonna go to I think it's the new college, which is the one that like you think of, like Harry Potter was filmed there, or parts of Harry Potter were, and so we're doing that. And then we're gonna spend a couple days in Scotland, see Edinburgh, see the Highlands briefly. I mean, you can't like see all of the Highlands in a day. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing, we just booked this, but for any of our like European listeners, you're probably like, okay, idiot American, but Europe has this really cool thing for everyone who isn't European.
Called trains.
Called trains, high-speed trains, and they go super fast, and they go underwater, and like 200 feet underwater. It's so cool. I was reading all about the Eurostar, and I was just like, wow, I was never like a train kid, but like it made me feel like one. I was like, what a modern marvel of technology the Eurostar is. But we're going to take the Eurostar for a day trip to Paris, which we recently planned, but my friend had some canceled Eurostar tickets, and so she was able to use those to get us a pretty good discount, and I ended up only paying like £10 or something for this ticket to Paris. So like going to Paris for a day. So I'm gonna get to do a lot of things. I'm very excited.
And while you're there, you were telling me, isn't it your plan to go to the Louvre? And you said something about needing to buy some high-vis jackets and scooters, though. So I don't know what that is, but I don't know.
I was thinking of performing a heist in mid-daylight, potentially. No, I think that in Paris, my main goal is just seeing the Eiffel Tower, obviously, and then having a pastry. Like, those are the two things.
Oh my God, you should try and go. Isn't Paris where, like, Shakespeare Books is?
Shakespeare and Company?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, I'll go there. We have, like, I think 7 or 8 hours in our day, because we're leaving like super early in the morning and then leaving on the last train at night. So I definitely will have time to do that. I want to see Luxembourg Gardens. I've never been like, of all the places in Europe, if I were like ranking where I want to go, like Paris has never been super high on my list of like, oh, I have to go to Paris, but I'm definitely excited to go. It's just like, I don't know, I feel like I've heard some bad things about tourism experiences there specifically, which I get it, like Americans are annoying, so whatever. But yeah, we'll see. But I'll give everyone I think what you guys can expect is I'll give a review of the bookshops I visit, because I'll try to go to Shakespeare and Company, and then there's a bookshop in Edinburgh that I want to go to, and then I'm going to go to Waterstones, which is kind of like the Barnes and Noble of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you all my bookstore reviews when the trip is over. But yeah, it should be really exciting, and I thought this was relevant to talk about today, since we're in England in the setting of our book. I'm not going to Bath though, and I don't know if I'll be visiting any pump rooms, but you know,
Who's to say?
who's to say? So yeah, with that, let's talk about Northanger Abbey, and more specifically Jane Austen, our girl. So Jane Austen, as a lot of the authors that we've discussed thus far on the podcast, came from a relatively affluent family. And she was, if you remember in this book, there were varying degrees of wealth. So everyone in the social circle of Northanger Abbey was wealthy, but there were varying degrees. So she was actually kind of on the lower end, her family, compared to some of the other families. But keep in mind that that doesn't mean she wasn't rich, because when we talk about the Regency Era, you'll get what I mean. She was born in 1775 to Reverend George Austen and his wife Cassandra. And Cassandra didn't work because it's 1775. And she was born in Hampshire, England, and she was the 7th of 8 children. So basically like one of the babies of the family. It was a family of 6 boys and 2 girls. And she was very close throughout life with her sister, Cassandra. Same name as her mother. Older sister, Cassandra. So, you know, when you're a girl amongst 6 boys, obviously you're going to get close to the one other girl, your sister, especially in such a like socially divided gender structure of 1775, you know? Yeah. And the version of Northanger Abbey that I have, which I believe is the one you have as well, Samuel, it's the Signature Classics version.
Yeah, and doesn't it open with like a little biography or something? Because I explicitly did not read that, because I was like, oh, you know what? I think Sydney's probably going to want to tell me stuff from this.
Yeah, so it actually has like a whole timeline of Jane Austen's life. So thanks to whoever decided to do that, that's helpful to me. And then it also has an introduction written by Lisa Dressner. I don't know who that is, but Lisa, thank you for your introduction. In the introduction, it has a sentence that I liked that kind of describes the type of family that Jane Austen was growing up in. And it says, Jane Austen was born into a large, dynamic family of overachievers who provided her with an entree into a variety of fascinating worlds. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go forward. The young Austen was surrounded by relatives who wrote poetry, edited literary magazines, performed plays, preached sermons, managed farms, taught school, joined the Navy, got themselves adopted by glamorous distant relations, and conducted romantic foreign intrigues. So, if that's not an atmosphere that primes you to write books, I don't know what is. But she had a lot of culture around her, especially for the time.
Yeah.
And she had a lot of opportunities afforded to her. She was a woman in the 1700s and then the 1800s. So, like, obviously her life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but she had a lot of opportunity. And she spent a lot of her life in boarding schools. She wasn't consistently in school her whole life, but she did get an education, and a lot of women didn't at this time. She went to boarding school in Oxford. She went to boarding school in Southampton, and I didn't write it down, but she went to another boarding school somewhere, and there were different time periods where she was in schools. She was also another kind of like disadvantage of her childhood, which was the disadvantage of every British kid's childhood at the time, is she was growing up during the Revolutionary War and then immediately after that, the French Revolution. So she was growing up in wartime, but she was growing up in a wealthy family during wartime. And so all this to say is, like, Jane Austen had a lot of things helping her out and helping her get to the place that she ended up being in.
Yeah, most of those things were dollars.
Most of those things were dollars. Yeah, dollars in education will do a lot for a young woman in the 1700s. But she began writing satirical fiction from a very young age. The first published work that she wrote, she began writing when she was a teenager. It wasn't the first thing that was published, but it was eventually published. So her serious writing began in her teenage years. The author of the introduction, Lisa, that I mentioned, she calls her type of writing humorous domestic fiction, which I thought was a fun description.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's clearly satirical as well. Something that happened a few things happened in her teenage years that are very relevant for this book specifically. One is that she had a brief flirtation with a man named Tom Lefroy, and they were in love, like very in love, and she wanted to marry him, but they couldn't marry because neither of their families had enough money to sustain them. And this is kind of getting a bit into like our Regency era history, but basically when a man and a woman, only a man and a woman, wanted to get married.
Otherwise, they're just roommates.
In the 18th century or even the 19th century, for some time, women didn't work most of the time. And so there had to be familial money to support the marriage, because usually the men were still like building their wealth to an extent. And so basically there was like this season every year of dating and a mating season. and then if a man and a woman chose to like enter into an engagement, that engagement was contingent upon how much money both the man's family and the woman's family could provide for their start out life together. And so, and it really varied by situation, I'm sure. And also there was still arranged marriages. Like, it's not like everyone was just marrying for love. But in this situation, she really loved this man and they couldn't get married. And then he left and she never saw him again. And that might have inspired some of the critiques of the financial aspects of marriage that she wrote about in Northanger Abbey.
Yeah.
Because of this, she lives at home, continuing into her teen years and then into her 20s, with her sister Cassandra as well. So it's her parents and then her and Cassandra, because Cassandra was engaged but her fiance died, which is quite sad. But, you know, at least they got to have their sister bond. So she lives at home, and in 1794, the mysteries of Udolpho, and I promised myself I would look up how to pronounce that, and then I forgot to, so sorry, I might be mispronouncing it again. The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe was published, and this was a bestseller. It gained a lot of popularity. And also in the 1790s, Jane Austen was taking 2 separate trips to Bath with her family and doing basically what Catherine Morland, the main character of Northanger Abbey, was doing. So in the 1790s, she was basically living the life of Northanger Abbey.
Yeah.
But she didn't begin writing this book until 1798. So throughout like the 1790s and as early as the 1780s, she was writing, but none of her works were published. And so like she just kind of was writing, like it was a pastime, and she wrote a lot of her most famous books she began at this time, but none of them had been published. In 1801, Jane Austen's family moves to Bath because her father retires, and they decide that they want to retire there as a family. So that means she and Cassandra also move. And Jane Austen is not into Bath. Like, she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the social aspect of it all. This is not her scene, which once again might be something that inspires her tone in this book. She's not into it. But don't worry, her father dies.
Good fucking riddance.
And because of that, they move to Southampton. And eventually, they don't stay in Southampton for long. They move back to Hampshire in 1809. And keep in mind, this is her mother, her, and her sister. So none of them have any money because they're women. And so that means that her brothers are basically supporting their family now at this point because the patriarch of the family had passed away. But she moves to this cottage in Hampshire. She lives there with her mother, her sister, and then also a family friend who is unmarried because, like, unmarried women have to stick together.
Yeah.
And she stays in this cottage until her death. So honestly, seems kind of cool. Like, she doesn't have to deal with some man she doesn't want to marry. And she gets to hang out with her gals in the cottage. She did get proposed to again at one point, but she didn't love the guy, and she happened to have the luxury to say no. Some people might not have.
Yeah.
So her first published novel, like the first novel that was actually published, was Sense and Sensibility in 1811, and it was published anonymously, and it sold out within 2 years. So it had a lot of success, and she continued to publish novels throughout the rest of her life. What?
Do you know approximately how many copies that is? Because you also mentioned that the Radcliffe novel was like a bestseller. And I just feel like I have no idea, like no concept of what constituted a bestseller in the year of our Lord, 1796.
That's a good question.
Because like I feel like today a book is a bestseller and makes the bestseller list at like, oh, it sold a couple 100,000 copies or 1 million copies, and it's like noteworthy. I feel like back then it had to have been like 10,000, 100.
750.
Damn, it was so easy to be famous back then.
Yeah, so this was... That's from Wikipedia also, citing my source. Don't know if that's actually... Okay, well, this source, which is janeaustenshouse.com, says it's the first print run, which probably consisted between 750 to 1,000 copies, completely sold out within 2 years.
Okay, so if you sold 500 copies a year, you were a wunderkind author.
Yeah. And it says that it made her a profit of about £140, which, keep inflation in mind with that number, but yeah.
I feel like that's comparable to what authors today make. Like not adjusting for inflation, just £140.
But she continued to gain success basically throughout the rest of her life, but she remained an anonymous author until after her death, because woman.
Yeah.
But in 1816, she gets sick. Specifically, she was having like fits of fever, and she was exhausted, and she remained sick. She did several things to try to treat it. It's 1816. They don't know what's going on. And she dies in 1817 at age 41. And her cause of death is to date unknown. There's several theories by like doctors today who have tried to guess at her symptoms, but really we don't know why she died.
Yeah.
And that's Jane Austen. Any thoughts, questions before we move into the next area of our context?
No, so Did she publish pseudonymously under a man's name?
Not that I read up. I think it was, what it did say is that, like, for example, she published Sense and Sensibility, and then her next novel that was published was Pride and Prejudice, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she remains anonymous, but they say by the author of Sense and Sensibility.
Oh, interesting.
So they just, like, related her new books to previous best-selling books, and that garnered interest, apparently.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't until after her death that Northanger Abbey was published. It was
Yeah.
published in 1818, so just a year after. There was actually this, like, four volume set that included Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, a biographical notice of the author, which identified her and was written by her brother, and then also her, like, it's called an advertisement, which described the publishing history of Northanger Abbey, which I didn't really talk about, but basically, like, she sold the manuscript of Northanger Abbey long before it was published, but the people she sold it to never did anything with it.
Okay.
And
that was going to be the next question. I was curious. I knew that this was published posthumously. I didn't know if it was finished or if it was, like, compiled from notes after her death.
No, it was finished. There were several unfinished things that pieces of them were eventually published, but this one was finished, as well as Persuasion. But yeah, and then, it wasn't until the late 1800s, I think, that, like, her legacy really started to take shape, because she was mostly unknown until after her death.
Yeah.
But that is Jane Austen. And something I mentioned in this description of her life was The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. So with that, let's move into talking about Gothic literature, which learning about this kind of excited me, because, guys, Jane Austen, she seems like a smart gal. She was satirizing the genre of Gothic fiction basically only 30 years after it was established, which is kind of cool because it was still a very new genre, and she tapped into its motifs and its style and was able to create something that both defended the genre but also critiqued it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. So the first ever Gothic fiction novel that we really know of is called The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. It was published in 1764, and it's what's basically credited with boom in Gothic fiction, which was happening in the late 1700s. Early novels, like, in this genre were very, like, focused on, like, morality and philosophy and religion, and normally the villains of the story were a metaphor for something that, like, humans had to overcome, a temptation that humans often faced. And then another big thing that, like, really differed about these novels than what people were reading at the time was that the endings weren't usually good, and there was never, like, a central romance that was driving the plot forward. Like, maybe there was romance, but it wasn't the focus. It was more so about, like, the battle between, like, the good of humanity and the forces of evil.
Yeah.
And so I was reading, the New York Public Library has a brief history of Gothic horror. It's a article or a blog, I guess, published in 2018 by Amanda Pagan. who is a children's librarian for the New York Public Library System, or was at least in 2018. And she describes it as the battle between humanity and the unnatural forces of evil, sometimes man-made, sometimes supernatural, within an oppressive, inescapable, and bleak landscape is considered to be the true trademark of a Gothic horror novel. So these are the core elements that separate Gothic horror from its cousin, Gothic romance. So you know,
Yeah.
don't confuse them. So that was the first one, and then from there, just several Gothic novels were published. There was the Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe in 1794. In 1796, there was a book called The Monk by Matthew Lewis. Obviously, a very well-known Gothic horror novel is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. That was published in 1818. And so many more. It's just the genre itself was experiencing a boom.
Yeah.
Over time, the genre started to kind of shift. It still retains there's like some core elements of like that we've already discussed a little bit, but you have like this inescapable place. And so this place could be something like an abbey or like a castle, an old castle, ruins, a manor house, those kind of things. So that's like a continued thing that happens in all Gothic novels. There's some remote place where characters are often trapped. They can't leave.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. And then there's also the consistency of characters that exist in Gothic novels.
Yeah.
So there's always the definitive villain, whoever the villain is. And then there's usually like an innocent character. There's, it could be a virgin, a wife who is very devout to her husband. It could be a servant. It could be a peasant. That kind of thing. There's some kind of like innocence, and then there's often like supernatural elements weaved in with the real world elements. So there like might be ghosts, for example. And so those kind of setting and character elements remain consistent throughout Gothic novels. And this boom of Gothic novels, another source that I was reading says that it's usually seen as being between 1764 and 1820. And during this period, it was pretty consistent, and there was consistent authors that were discussed. But then after this, it starts to change. But I want you to read something about this period of time.
Though this time span is still used to describe the rise and, quote, fall of Gothic literature, the genre experienced in the 1790s a period of such vogue that it is now referred to as the effulgence of Gothic, after Robert Miles' study of the same name. It was during this period that the most well-known Gothic authors, including Anne Radcliffe, discussed in Female Gothic, and Matthew Gregory Lewis, published most of their fiction and inspired a deluge of imitations.
So, all that to say is this period of time is kind of like in the history of Gothic literature what we credit with creating all of these motives, all these things that we continue to use over time. And I liked that passage because I mentioned Anne Radcliffe, which was cool. That came from this like guide to the Gothic that I got off this website called Press Books. I don't really know who it's by, but but after that time, it like it mentioned, it kind of experiences a fall and it becomes less popular.
Yeah.
And then it experienced like a resurgence during the Victorian era. And so during the Victorian era, there was things like The Woman in White, published in 1859, Dracula, published in 1897. People might know, I've seen this on Book Talk, Carmilla,
Yeah.
which is a novella published in 1871. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1886, H.P. Lovecraft. And these authors were borrowing from that genre, but in themes they started to differ. They weren't necessarily focused on like the forces of good and evil and religion and philosophy and the struggle of man. They more leaned into like the horror of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, Samuel, I don't know if you have anything to add about this, because I feel like you kind of naturally know a lot more about that than me. Is there anything about like the change of like the gothic and the horror genre that you want to discuss?
I mean, I feel like that was the era where things started to lean less literal in a lot of fiction, where I feel like a lot of the books that you just listed, a lot of them are dealing with the same themes and making conversation on the same topic as those earlier Gothic books. The difference is that it is now talking about it through metaphor as opposed to like directly addressing it. So I feel like it's really easy to see that evolution of literature and the evolution of style that took place in order to get from a point where you were writing in this very literal sense about these workings in society to a point where you're talking about Dracula, who is this figure who's repulsed by Christianity and stuff. Like, you can definitely see that through thread, but I feel like it's definitely interesting to see the introduction of more of those what are now well-known figurative devices.
And so I think that's just interesting, and the history continues on from there, but we only have so much time. You know, if you guys want us to do an entire episode on Gothic and horror as a genre and all the subgenres of the Gothic, you know, one of my favorite types of books is Southern Gothic, so we can talk about that. But it all started with these books that were just set in a spooky place with these consistent characters making larger comments on life and humanity. And that's really interesting. And so that start is what Jane Austen is satirizing. And I promised last week that we would have a couple examples of what that looks like in Northanger Abbey, so we can keep these in mind for next week. And so I have a few different passages. We're going to take turns reading them.
Awesome.
The first one this is at the point in Northanger Abbey when she is kind of romanticizing the thought of going to the Northanger Abbey. And it says, "The happiness of a progress through a long suite of lofty rooms exhibiting the remains of magnificent furniture, though now for many years deserted, the happiness of being stopped in their way along narrow winding vaults by a low grated door, or even having their only lamp extinguished by a sudden gust of wind, and of being left in total darkness." And I like that one because I think like that's such that specific trope of like, oh, all your light is out and you're plunged into darkness. That's used in horror. That's used in scary movies today. Like that remains a consistent trope, and it was invented around the time that Jane Austen was writing this book.
Yeah. And then the one Sydney sent me, "The night was stormy. The wind had been rising at intervals the whole afternoon, and by the time the party broke up, it blew and rained violently. It was a dark and stormy night." And then also, "The window curtains seemed in motion. It could be nothing but the violence of the wind penetrating through the divisions of the shutters. And she stepped boldly forward, carelessly humming a tune, to assure herself of its not being so, peeped courageously behind each curtain, saw nothing on either low window seat to scare her, and on placing a hand against the shutter, felt the strongest conviction of the wind's force."
So it's just eerie, it's spooky. Is it the wind or is there something behind the curtains? Except for if it was a scary movie today, then it wouldn't be the white girl checking it out. But anyways, well, it might be. I don't know. But, and then the last one that I wanted to read is, this one I really liked, and it like made me laugh out loud because this is over the course of 3 pages. And so on one page, she says, Catherine's blood ran cold with the horrid suggestions which naturally sprang from these words. Could it be possible? Could Henry's father? And yet, how many were the examples to justify even the blackest suspicions? And when she saw him in the evening, while she worked with her friends, slowly pacing the drawing room for an hour together in silent thoughtfulness, with downcast eyes and contracted brow, she felt secure from all possibility of wrongdoing him. And so here we are, she's like constructing this classic villain already, the downcast eyes, the arched brows. So right here, Catherine is saying, like, could he be a villain? And then 2 pages later, she says, in the high arched passage paved with stone, which already she had trodden with peculiar awe, she well remembered the doors of which the general had given no account. To what might not these doors lead? In support of the plausibility of this conjecture, it further occurred to her that the forbidden gallery in which lay the apartments of the unfortunate Mrs. Tilney must be, as certainly as her memory could guide her, exactly over the suspected range of cells, and the staircase by the side of those apartments of which she had caught a transient glimpse, communicating by some secret means with those cells, might well have favored the barbarous proceedings of her husband. So 2 pages later, she's like, his wife is locked down there. And that cracked me up reading it. I was like, wait, how did it happen that quickly? So yeah, that is Gothic literature and its history in a nutshell. That was as much as I can do in this episode. And then I briefly want to discuss the Regency Era. I actually don't have too much to say about this.
Okay.
Because it's pretty straightforward. But the last thing like we need to talk about is kind of what was going on in this time period in terms of this social class that both Jane Austen and the main character, Kathleen Morland, were in.
Yeah.
And the Regency Era is technically considered to be 1811 to 1820, but it overlaps a bit with the Georgian era, and they have very similar things going on. Like, it's not... all of that does, like, the reason it's called that is, like, because of a specific person in power. So, like, the Regency Era is referring to George IV, who was serving as regent during this time period. Okay. So it's not... they're named after people, and it's debated whether Northanger Abbey is supposed to be Georgian or Regency, and also in general whether Jane Austen's novels are Georgian or Regency. So okay. It's not super important. But what you need to know about the time period is that though it's technically short, the term has become used to encompass like a broader time frame that was like very important socially and culturally in Great Britain specifically. Mm-hmm. And what was going on is there was a lot of really rich people who were living in this social era of elegance and balls and duels and romance and everything we talked about in Northanger Abbey. That was happening constantly with that class of people, but this is juxtaposed with extreme, some of the worst in history poverty happening in the cities and happening as a result of like social and political unrest. And so it's actually like it's interesting because so many people even today romanticize this era of time. Mm-hmm. You know, we have Bridgerton, we have so many like novels and shows based on this time period, and they all are about these like rich people and their lives. Yeah. But they're not usually about the widespread poverty because of all the war and the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So.
And because of the rich people.
And because of the rich people. But there were people in that class, like Jane Austen and other notable literary figures, who were kind of capturing and also satirizing and calling out the like absurdity of the social dynamics at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say what you want about writing from within that class, but Jane Austen was punching up. Like, she wasn't, she wasn't writing about the lower classes that were experiencing this widespread poverty, but she wasn't in that. She couldn't write about it. And, she could have done what some authors do and just pretend to be homeless or something.
Who could that have been?
Real lore heads know the callback. But she was critiquing the frivolity of the time.
Yeah.
Frivolity? Yeah. And I think that, like, we could go in depth talking about the political unrest and all the things that were causing this extreme poverty, but that's actually not relevant for the book that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's an important conversation to be had, but what we're talking about is these people who were establishing a lot of like cultural trademarks in fashion and media and style that continue to be popular today in some ways. I mean, it had a cultural impact that's lasted centuries.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. But it's it's important to note that it wasn't all muslin and pounds, British pounds. There was a lot going on at this time for other people who weren't in this social class. And also people who were in this social class, there was difficulties. I mean, there was very strict societal expectations in terms of etiquette and what a woman could be. I mean, specifically for women, but like you had to be a specific type of woman in order to be married off, and in order to like truly find success and stability in life, you basically had to get married. I mean, we see an example in Jane Austen of someone who it still worked out, but her family was not within that class of people wealthy. They were actually like kind of lower on the scale of wealth, and then she ended up having to rely on her brothers to sustain her in her life, which, I mean, it wasn't very long that she lived past when her father died, actually, but still.
Yeah.
And so that's basically all I wanted to say. That's the context. Any questions? Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that you covered it. There, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in that time period that's not really relevant to this book. It's interesting to think about because, like you said, I feel like this era is very romanticized, where books depicting it are made into TV shows that people love. People love the books themselves. And I think it's easy to romanticize from the fact that if you were in the privileged class, your life would have been so much better than it currently is. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense that you look back to that and you're like, oh, wow, that would have been so perfect. Because I think that part of it is, even in fiction and pop culture, I think that it holds true the saying that the victor writes the history books, where you think about previous conflicts and wars and stuff like that, and generally whoever wins the war gets to decide what the war was about. You're the one that gets to write the history books afterwards. And if you're looking culturally at this time period, the victors are the people who were rich. And so they got, because they were rich, they got to write all of the books, they got to write music. They had the capacity to contribute to what is now such a staple part of our social fabric. And that's why I feel like it's easy to romanticize it and ignore the negative aspects, because, like you said, there's just really wasn't a lot of people who were writing the stories of the people that were less fortunate than them. And there were significantly fewer opportunities if you were less fortunate to write about yourself.
Yeah. And it's also just interesting because there was also a lot of negatives of that life for the people in it, specifically for the women as well. And so it's just, it's really interesting time. Right after that was the Victorian era, and Oliver Twist came from that. So there's some stories about people who weren't really rich.
Yeah.
I don't actually know anything about the author of Oliver Twist.
I know nothing at all. I could not even tell you who the author is, man or woman.
Isn't it Charles Dickens?
Could be.
Is that Charles Dickens? Wait, no, sorry, I gotta look it up. Oliver Twist. Yes, it's Charles Dickens.
I'm just not a huge Dickensian fan.
Yeah, me either. But, I wonder what was Dickens' writing process for Oliver Twist. I don't know that classifies as satire necessarily, so I don't know if we can cover it.
We'll look into it. We'll try to figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But if we don't, other book podcasts out there, I'm curious. Tell me what he did to understand the lives of the poor, unfortunate souls in the lower class. All right, well, that'll do it. I hope this wasn't too scattered, because I feel like we were trying to deal with 3 different things in one episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and got something out of it. We will be back next week discussing Northanger Abbey, our thoughts, meshing together everything we've talked about the past 2 weeks, and seeing what we think about it. So that should be fun. And you'll get to hear Samuel talk a lot more. Sorry, I'm yapping away. But before we go, we'll do one more thing. You'll get to hear Samuel talk more in this one. We're going to play one of our favorite games, Have They Read It, with Northanger Abbey. It's just a game where we wildly speculate whether public figures and celebrities have read the book. So I guess I'll start us off strong with someone I talked about just last week. And I think we've done her for another Have We Read It, but Taylor Swift, do you think she's read it?
No.
Really?
I feel like this is in the ballpark of a book that Taylor Swift would have read. But I just don't see it.
Okay.
I feel like I could see her powering through Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice, but I just don't know if she would have read this one. This one is one of the more obscure Jane Austen books, I think.
You know, I found this TikTok account. Shout out. It's at the Jade Library.
Okay.
And this person, I really like it. It's interesting. And they basically do like the intersection of books and pop culture. And they have like, book recommendations based on like well-known pop culture things, like based on your favorite TV show or your favorite movie or your favorite celebrity singer or whatever. And they do like celebrity book club posts where they're like, here's books that this celebrity has read or mentioned reading. And they did a whole post of books that Taylor Swift has mentioned.
Okay.
But Northanger Abbey wasn't on it, so I don't know.
You can't instantly prove me wrong.
So I can't instantly prove you wrong. But I do know that she likes a variety of classics and modern literature, including Normal People, another Satire Fire mentioned book.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking of Jane Austen. Obviously, I feel like the most relevant modern day touching point when it comes to Jane Austen culturally is the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Do you believe star of Pride and Prejudice, Keira Knightley, has read Northanger Abbey?
So Keira Knightley has recently been doing some weird stuff.
Okay.
in the public eye. Not weird stuff. She just no, not weird, but I'm trying to think about like
What has she done? Do we hate her?
No, it's okay. So Keira Knightley is playing Dolores Umbridge in the TV show adaptation of Harry Potter.
Okay.
And they gave an interview. She gave an interview and was asked about like J.K. Rowling and the association of like the person of J.K. Rowling with the works. What do you call that? When it's not just, but what is the world of Harry Potter? And she basically was just like, I wasn't aware.
Oh, so
I
we
wasn't
do
aware
hate
that there
her.
was a problem. Like, it wasn't like it wasn't, let me see if I can find the exact quote. This video is called Keira Knightley Hilariously Mocks J.K. Rowling Boycott Demands. Wow. Oh. I mean, basically she just was like, I didn't know that J.K. Rowling was transphobic. I didn't know there was an issue. That's, I don't know if there's been more that has happened. But anyways, all that to say is that I found that to be a really interesting answer to that question. And therefore I don't think she's read Northanger Abbey. I think she does seem like someone who researches for the roles that she plays. So she's she probably read Pride and Prejudice, but
fair enough.
No, I don't know. Everyone who don't take me as your only source of information, go watch the interview, but really interesting stuff. I'm saying this as like the biggest Harry Potter fan I know. Not me. I'm the biggest Harry Potter fan that I know, and I'm saying that. I'm saying that was wild. Okay. Let me think about Northanger Abbey, Gothic. Okay, so I mentioned Southern Gothic earlier, and one of the most well-known Southern Gothic authors is Flannery O'Connor. Do you know Flannery O'Connor?
I am aware of Flannery O'Connor.
Okay. Do you think Flannery O'Connor read Northanger Abbey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think that I personally love Flannery O'Connor, but I think that Flannery O'Connor was a very educated person. And I don't think that there's any shot that somebody who is as much of a cornerstone of a genre that is Gothic as she is could make it in the industry and have not read other Gothic books.
Yeah. I didn't know. I was wondering if like Northanger Abbey is considered a cornerstone of early Gothic, maybe. But yeah, I don't know.
So he's already come up. I'm curious what you think. Has our boy Charles Dickens read Northanger Abbey? Do you think he got around to it?
No, he's busy. He is booked and busy writing way too many words on a page. He was like, let me think of every adjective that's ever been uttered and let me put it on this piece of paper.
Way too many serialized chapter by chapter newspaper publications.
He was like, adverbs, those are cool. Let me put a lot of them without purpose. He was doing that. I don't think he was reading other literature to get tips on how to not be so wordy. Sorry.
Fair enough.
I'm also a Charles Dickens. I mean, I've only read 1.5 Charles Dickens books, and that
I think,
was enough.
if I'm honest, I think that I've probably also read 1.5 Charles Dickens books, but I've started 3, so...
So what does that tell you? All right, well, that will do it. Thank you for coming. If you want to be in touch with us between now And next week, you can find us on our social media. We are on Instagram at the Satire Fire Pod, Pod, and we are on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube at the Satire Fire. Like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever you want to do. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we of course always appreciate it if you tell your friends, if you leave a comment, if you rate us 5 stars, leave a review wherever you're listening. All those things are really helpful to us. Our intro and outro are remixes of the song 48 by Cullah. And if you come back next week, you'll get to hear us do our 3rd part of the Northanger Abbey series, where we're both going to be talking about how we felt about the book, what we think the analysis is, giving our reviews of it, and also letting you know what the next series is going to be. All that and more in next week's episode.
Okay, great. Well, one last time, thank you. Support your local library. Support your local bookstores. Support the Satire Fire. No, okay. I'm Sydney.
I'm Samuel.
And this is the Satire Fire. Bye.
Bye.
I just about come to the end of the road. Here, I've just about lost patience with you people. You get your ass out into the mountains or someplace, or hide in there and watch that damn tube. But if not, fuck it. I'm done. In fact, my sermon